You see, far to the east, so far east that it becomes again west, there lies a desert. A desert of black, fine volcanic sand that curls up in the wind into great dust storms. An impossible desert beyond space and outside of time. And out of this desert flies a bird with wings of fire. Silver and gold and crimson and purple fire drips from its wings as it flies out across our world, collecting stories. The phoenix flies out across our world, listening to our stories and collecting them and hearing them and sharing them back with us. And it will fly throughout our world, throughout all of the ages, teaching them to storytellers, hearing them from everyone. But every age of humans must come to an end, so that a new age may begin. And at the end of each age, the phoenix flies out of our world, east, 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 until east again becomes west and enters again that desert at the edge of time, beyond space, that black desert of volcanic sand. And at the very center of the desert, it builds a nest, piling high the sand in a circle around itself and lining it with the black obsidian glass that you find in that place, still hot from its birth. And it lines its nest with its own plumage, and it moats the nest with the silver waters of the river Lethe that flow through that impossible place, the waters of forgetting and remembering. It moats its nest. And as the sun sets on that last day of the dying age, the phoenix roosts in its nest. And as the last light leaves the sky at every angle, at every horizon, the phoenix is consumed. And all that night, all that dark night after the dying of the age, is stillness, silence. But every night must have a dawn. And so the light again begins to grow, and the black sky in that impossible desert begins to lighten. First a blue or a purple. At every horizon, impossibly, it begins to lighten, from purple to orange to red to yellow to an impossible sunrise. At every horizon, the sun bursts up brightest white, and if you were to be in that impossible place, at that impossible sunrise, in that impossible desert, outside of time and beyond space, if you were there and looking at that nest carefully, you would see a hint of movement under the sand, in the center of that nest. And if you kept watching, eventually you would see a little larva, a worm, bright crimson red, begin to crawl up out of that sand. This larval phoenix hungers, and so it begins to eat of its own nest. First, that black volcanic sand, it takes it in, that sand of memory. Then the hot obsidian glass, still burning with the fire from which it was born. It eats, it consumes, and then the plumage of the phoenix before it was engulfed. It eats, and it eats, and as it eats, it grows. Massive, a giant world serpent, it grows, and as it grows, and as it consumes, it thirsts, and it drinks deep of that silver Lethe river, that water of forgetting and remembering. And it drinks and eats and consumes all that day between the ages. And as the sun begins to set in yet another impossible sunset, at every horizon, the sky growing dark again, from white to orange to red to blue and purple and finally black, that great world serpent burrows down into the sand, deep, 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 and all that dark night, as the wind swirls the sand in that place, it remembers. It draws those connections between stories of the past age and all the ages before it, those connections that become themes. It draws those connections and it remembers. And then the sky begins to lighten again in the dawning of the new age of humans. The sky lightens again from deepest black to blue to purple, orange and red and yellow, and finally, in yet another impossible sunrise, it comes up white, blazing hot, and just as it crests over every horizon in that impossible desert, beyond space and outside of time, out of the sand bursts again the phoenix, again in flame, dripping from its wings of silver and gold and crimson and purple. And it flies out from that place, back into our world, to again hear our stories, listen to our stories, and teach them back to us. Now, there are many stories about the phoenix. Its tears can heal the sick, its cry can raise the dead. But those are other stories.